In this video, it's my pleasure to be conducting an interview with Dan Rovira of the Backgammon Is Beautiful YouTube channel. Thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoy this video. Please like and subscribe, and you'll be notified every time I upload a new video. Please let me know what you think in the comments below and what you'd like to see in future videos so I can work on that. My book, Backgammon Backgame Strategies, is now available. There's a link in the description where you can buy it, and I am offering lessons. If you're interested, please email me. My email is in the description. So in this video, I'm talking with Dan Rovira. Welcome, Dan.
Hi, Alex. Thanks for inviting me on your channel.
My pleasure. Thank you for joining me. And you're joining us out of southern UK today, is that correct?
Yes, I'm reporting live from Worthing. It's just about 30 minutes on Brighton in the UK.
Very good. Let me go ahead and put this up so people can see this. So this is the cover, and this is your Backgammon Is Beautiful YouTube channel. You have over 100 videos and over 2,000 subscribers, and I look forward to speaking with you about that shortly. I'd like to start, if I may, with a little background biographical information about you. Where were you born and raised, and education and things like that?
Sure, yeah. So I grew up in Birmingham, second largest city in the UK, in the Midlands. I had a pretty happy childhood. I played games when I was young, like cards. My grandfather was always into cards and card magic. Used to watch, Paul Daniels on the TV. Went to a school, a boys' school, and again, the people I associated with, I guess you would call them geeky by today's standards, where we would talk about games and gaming, and whether it was like the Super Nintendo, or like card games. And you may have heard of Magic, like the CCG Magic. Well, I used to play a Star Wars CCG game where you bought the cards in like a sealed pack, and then you'd make a deck, and then you'd play against one another. And there is a strategy involved about which cards would you put in your deck. So from a very early age, I was into games and into strategy, and I think it was only a matter of time before I found backgammon. Yeah.
And now you're a teacher, right?
Yeah, that's right. So I'm an English teacher in a college. I teach A level, but also international students as well. I've taught English for 12 years, and my role, my job as an English teacher very much correlates with backgammon and my channel, and how I approach a game in many ways.
Yeah, we can talk about that. And I understand you're married, but no children, right?
No children, no.
Yeah, I have. My son saw our wedding pictures, and he said, "You didn't have gray hair in those pictures." I said, "That was before I was married and before you were born."
They say for teaching 1 year teaching, you age 3 years as a result. So
Teaching does the same thing, doesn't it? And I know you have some other interests outside of backgammon, literature and other things.
yeah, so I teach literature, but I'm a huge lover of literature. I'm an avid reader, and have always been so. I mean, I love books, and I share this passion actually with a small coterie of backgammon players, where when we meet up and we play or a charrette, we can also talk about what we've read, which is nice as well.
And what kind of literature do you enjoy reading?
All types, really. Classics, modern literature, poetry. Yeah, whatever. I'm quite eclectic, I suppose, in my tastes for literature. That sounds a little bit kind of highfalutin, but I go to a charity shop mainly to buy my books, and I buy what attracts my attention, and that could be from any genre, by any writer. So that's how I go about procuring new books to read.
And what about backgammon literature? What have you read?
Um, most books, most famous books. So I really enjoyed Masterclass.
Yeah.
Matri and Mark and Alec Barr did an excellent job in that as well. Of course, Mark Olson's other books, Pure Strategy, I think is excellent for a conceptual understanding. But then some of the older books by Marty Storer, like Backgammon Praxis, What's Your Game Plan, Boot Camp. Grant Hoffman has got a PDF of his position of the day, and he's got some fantastic analysis in there. Roberti, I mean, the Todd Yu book, which I bought in Monte Carlo, was superb.
Yeah.
But I mean, and your book, of course, which I had the pleasure to proofread. I mean, I think the first extensive study of back games. So plenty of room.
Yeah, that one is it's more technical. I appreciate that. It's I think I selected the topic because it was something that was never really written about in depth. But those other books read a, a lot of those. I think the first one I read was, Paul McGreal, like most people, and I've read many of Bill Roberti's books. So those are outstanding. I think you able to hear me? My internet connection was a little unstable.
Yeah, I heard you mentioned Roberti, and I think people like Roberti and
Okay.
Marty Storer, they have this brilliant way of articulating their concepts in a really clear and accessible way. Very, very, very good to read and pretty essential, I'd say, to newer players. Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of backgammon, when did you first start playing? Was it as a child or later on?
I didn't play as a child, really. I wasn't introduced to the game till much later in my life. I first played in Brighton. I went to a tea shop, and the owner of the tea shop, a guy called Tom, he ran a backgammon night. So I went to it and then learned to play backgammon there, and he taught me how to play. And we played really just socially to begin with. There was no money involved. It was just a bunch of friends drinking tea and playing backgammon. It was only 2 or 3 years later that I started entering tournaments, and then with the tournaments came the reading and taking it a bit more seriously, basically.
Right. Well, and what would you say you enjoy most about backgammon? Of course, you've been involved with it significantly in the past few years.
I think one of the things that I find beautiful about backgammon is that it's infinite, really. I mean, no one will fully unlock backgammon. I think it's why it's fascinated us for 5,000 years, or however many years it's been around. It's like a kaleidoscope, right? Like you can keep turning it and it'll keep throwing up new patterns. And I've now been playing backgammon for about 10 years, and obviously my understanding has vastly improved from when I started in a tea shop. But still, there's games, as I'm sure you play, that are new. New patterns, new things occur. So that's what keeps me engaged and draws you in, because there's no finite point. It's I very much think curiosity is a really key concept for just life. Being interested in things. And perhaps that's what drew me to teaching, because looking at a literature text has the same appeal as looking at a backgammon board, right? That you can keep going with a classic. So
Yeah, well, that's great. And I think you're of course best known for your YouTube channel and all the videos. So how did you get started doing that? What inspired you to do that?
um so so I've been teaching for a long time, and I've been playing backgammon for a reasonable amount of time, and I wanted to put my two passions together. So when I first started playing backgammon, I kind of didn't really know where to go, for like help, right? Like where do I look when I start out? And back then, there wasn't that much stuff on YouTube. Sure, there were videos, but there weren't several backgammon channels like there are now, like Zenek and Mitchie and yours and all of these different channels. So I created a few videos to begin with on things that I was interested in. And then I thought, yeah, I'll just put them up and see what the response was. And then I got good feedback on the videos. So that kind of encouraged me to make more videos. And then it kept on going, really. It was like this dialogue between me and the invisible audience. And I kept putting them out and getting feedback. And then that just motivated me to keep on going. And it was like a Pandora's box. When I delved into the videos I could make, there were so many other things that I wanted to talk about. I thought, gosh, I could do a video on this and a video on this and all these different aspects of the game. And then after making about 19 videos, I thought it would be nice to have a guest on the channel. So I had my friend Will Snellings come on for video 20, which was great. And we looked at Motch's blunders, which was easier created. It was. I had to kind of go through about 100 of Motch's matches online just to find a blunder. Obviously, he plays at incredible SGM level. So I was going through all these videos, watching them at like double speed, just trying to identify where the blunders were, to then put them into this video, to then have Will come on and commentate effectively on the right play. So that gave my channel a big boost. Obviously, Will, fantastic player, and then off the back of that, I got more people on. So then I had Dirk Sheeman come on to talk about the cube. Thomas Tenland came on. Lots of people I had on, R. Benjamin, Ryan Rebello, to a point where I think I finished with about 26 different guests on the channel. So I went every fifth video. I wanted someone famous to come on, rather than just me, talking week after week. It kind of gave a channel some credibility as well, having super grandmasters, having grandmasters. I mean, these are people that I wanted to interview. I wanted to kind of know what made them tick, what was the recipe for playing so well. And that was interesting for me as a player. And of course, for the audience as well, who, are players and they wanted to improve. So yeah, that was really good. I think other considerations came into play as well. So firstly, I mean, backgammon lessons are quite expensive, right?
Yeah.
You want a lesson with a top player, you're going to have to put up the money. And, not everybody has that kind of money, right? I mean, some people just, can't bankroll, weekly lessons with a strong player. So I thought, well, my content's free. It's 10 minutes of free backgammon knowledge. That's just accessible to everybody. So kind of that was also important as well. And the backgammon community has given me a lot in my life. So it was a way of me repaying that. Because I think we all have a responsibility, to grow backgammon. And, it's often said that we need to grow backgammon, we need to promote it, we need to do this, but how many people actually are doing that, So I think the channel, your channel, it's just growing the game, right? Bringing more people in, raising people's curiosity. So if I've been a small part of that, attracting new people, then I think it's a positive step forward for backgammon, in general.
I think you've been a large part of that, not just for myself, but a lot of people with whom I've spoken. So thank you for all that you've done. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so yeah, I know you had a lot of people. Remember one time we did a video about offense versus defense, so that was good. I appreciate having me on, and those are great. And I feel like, at least for me, when I do these videos, I actually learn by studying the moves and things like that. Do you find you've learned a lot by actually doing the videos and preparing them and studying?
Yeah, no question. It's definitely been great for me to train and practice, because often the position selection for the videos, it takes time to find positions that are suitable. And what I did on my videos is I would have something like blitz plays or tempo plays, and then I would have a collection of positions, right? So I'd have 5 or 6 positions in one video, and then I'd show them these are the tempo plays. So in a way, my channel was different in that way. I know in some other channels, they look at one position and they might spend the whole video just looking at one position and looking at different plays. I kind of wanted to look at a number of plays, a number of positions, so I could really reinforce the concept. As I mentioned earlier, Mark Olson's Pure Strategy, the first 100 pages of that is fantastic, because it's all about concept checking, right? Timing, purity. And I really think that is a way to get better at backgammon. You need to have this conceptual framework. So when you look at the board, you have this kind of toolbox of ideas. So in some ways, you can deconstruct the position in terms of these concepts. Like for me, like that is a way to learn, right? Because otherwise, you don't really know what you're looking at. Does that make sense?
I agree. I think for me, it's very valuable to learn by creating variants of positions, because you change one aspect of the position and it changes the correct play, and that gives you an understanding as to why.
Absolutely, yeah. So the why of the play is more important than the what. And yeah, I actually made a video on that, where I looked at some variations on a position, and then we went into the reasoning behind that. And that's a good point, because I think, people ask me, how do you improve? What do I need to do? And I think for some things I would say not to do. So, you can buy books which are very much like quiz books with hundreds of positions in, right? And you could sit down and go through all the positions. But I mean, what really are you learning, right? As a kind of newer player, as an intermediate player, if you just look at position after position after position, how are you embedding your learning, right? How are you kind of reinforcing your understanding? I think it's better to look at one position, like a 20-point holding game position, or a double 5 blitz position, and then move the checkers around. So have a reference point, and then move the checkers, and then doing that for 30 minutes or one position, in my opinion, is much better than looking at 50 positions where the takeaway is not going to be as fulfilling.
Absolutely. I agree. And I feel like also, making these videos, it's another form of social media. Like, we have the Facebook forums where people interact, but when watching the videos, people will interact with the comments, and there's a discussion, and you learn from other people too, and others learn from you.
Yeah, that's it. The community is great about that, and having people on, and it's a fantastic part of backgammon, isn't it? Kind of often at tournaments you don't have time to speak to people because they're quite condensed.
Right.
So actually getting to know people is fantastic. And when I went to Monte Carlo this year, having a channel was like a kind of prelude in some way. Yeah, they say, I mean, literature is the question minus the answer, right? And I think that's a good way to think about backgammon. It's a question minus the answer. A good position should make you think. It should raise questions, and it's that kind of curiosity and investigation which does something cerebrally to you, which makes you improve, right? Because you've got to do some of that thinking, right? Stick said that sometimes you got to do a bit of thinking, in these positions.
That thinking thing.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, the best teachers are people who foster that kind of metacognition, and you're thinking about thinking, right? And you're deepening your understanding. So they'll throw up a position, and then they'll say, why, and sometimes in class, right? I might ask a student 5 times in a row, why? Because I'm drilling down, to get them to something. And I think, there's a lot of stuff we do in backgammon, which is just almost autopilot, right? So make the 5 point, make the 5 point. But if you actually ask someone, like, why do you make the 5 point? Then it's like, oh, because because it's a 5 point, right? There's no like, but why? Well, like, are you just doing it because someone told you to do it? Do you know why that point is important? So that's where we're aiming for, right? I like that works for me. That kind of almost like aggressive, interrogation of an idea. You're distilling something down to the point in which it completely makes sense, right? And until you
Yeah,
hit that,
I understand. And yeah,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, you talk, Alex. Yeah, I could wax on for days.
Oh, well, I was going to let you finish your point. Well, I was going to say, with this, I feel like when I first started playing, more competitively, I've been playing since a child, but, maybe about 20 years ago or so, started playing a little bit more. And, I had a group of people and we played. But nowadays, with these videos and the social media, there's a whole huge community where you can interact with others and learn other things that you couldn't do before. And I think it's built a lot of friendships with people like outside of my personal local community, a lot of international people like yourself and from all over the world. I think that's been really enjoyable.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've made some great friends. We talk about backgammon, of course. We talk about literature. and we have that passion and that hunger for learning. And I'm really fascinated in what makes great players great. And I think from my interviews, I can kind of summarize, what top GMs have said. There's a common thread that you have to put the hours in, right? This is one thing that when I ask these people when they started out how many hours they played, 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, just sheer dedication and commitment, to the game. Like, you're not going to get better at backgammon if you play for 2 hours a week. There's no magic bullet. It's like studying literature. That's not enough time to understand a complex text, right? And variation, of course, as well, is something strong players say. They manipulate positions to see different variables, permutations. But it's time, it's time and effort and commitment which makes you better. And I certainly improved my PR from my channel because I was spending time making the videos, right? And collecting the positions and thinking about, what I wanted to do. And this is another point. They say when you articulate the ideas you have researched or read, then it moves from your short-term to your long-term memory. So there's an idea that if you read a really interesting chapter, in a book, maybe, something recently by Tardieu, now what you should do after reading it is you should record yourself articulating the key ideas in the chapter and then play it back. And there's something about, you're repackaging what you read into a new format that it consolidates the learning much better.
Yeah.
So I think that works. Yeah.
I agree. I mean, I was reading one of Bill Roberti's recent books on the opening, and I believe there was a part where he talks about players. He visited somewhere and they had players, maybe in their 70s or 80s who've been playing for 50 years plus, and they thought they were great because they've been playing for so long, but if you actually record their PRs, they're not so great. It's not just the playing, but you have to also do the studying, like you were talking about.
You kind of know how well you understand the game, right? You can be playing a match, and there's this kind of equilibrium when you're playing. Moves you're comfortable with, but then at some points you'll get a move. And it might be like the third move in where you'll feel a little tremor in your thinking that you don't understand it well enough, right? You're not sure, you're not confident on the right play. So that exposes kind of something, that you can study, right? And it's kind of, being attuned, to those shifts in temperament when you're playing, not just emotional temperament, but the kind of temperament in understanding. When you're playing, you should be able to feel those moments where I don't understand this position, and it feels like I'm kind of guessing a little bit at the right play. And if you can pinpoint those moments, then you have a good understanding, right, of yourself. You're able to reflect on your shortcomings and improve further. Otherwise, what are you saying? If you go to a tournament and say, oh, I can win every tournament, and when you lose you're angry, then basically you're just arrogant, right? You assuming your knowledge surpasses anybody else's, which is not the case. You're going to lose sometimes and lose badly, and it's not the dice, it's often your lack of understanding in the position. So yeah.
Yeah, and I know you've learned a lot by doing this, and now I understand you're also giving lessons in your free time. Is that correct?
Yeah, I do give backgammon lessons. I actually do some work for the BLC, the Backgammon Learning Centre, with Phil
Great.
Simborg. So that's fantastic. I plan to make some other videos in the future. I've taken a little break from my channel now, just to kind of have a rest and create some new ideas. So I plan to do some stuff collaboratively in the future. So watch that space.
Yeah, that will be great. In terms of your students, I think, Phil Simborg and the Backgammon Learning Center, that's an outstanding resource. If you're, let's say, what would be kind of the top things that you tell your students that come up in order to improve their game? Um, what are the most common things that kind of come up with your students?
um, so the BLC has a curriculum. Now, I think there's a big difference between being a good player and being a good teacher, right? I think there's actually a gulf between those two things, right? Like I am a trained teacher, right? It's a profession, right, to be a teacher, because learning how to sequence lessons, build on understanding, concept check, all these things are pedagogy. And having a pedagogical approach to backgammon is important, okay? Because a lesson is not just showing someone positions and then them telling you the answer, because anyone can do that, right? A lesson needs to be a bit more structured with a learning outcome that builds towards that outcome, right? What do I want the student to know by the end of this lesson? And how am I going to facilitate in getting that student there? So often, to answer your question, things like shot counting are really important to
Right.
learn early on. Dice probabilities and game plan is hugely important. So Masterclass was an excellent book on game plan, but there hasn't been that many books actually on game plan. I know yours on Back Games and Marty Storer's, but not so many on something so significant to improving. So getting them to think through game plan. And what I like to call as well the second best move. This is something,
Right.
a kind of quirk, I suppose, of my teaching, that I want students to identify not just the best move, but also a second best move, and then to discuss the difference between them.
Yeah, that's great. Mm. It's
Yeah.
great. I mean, I enjoy learning, I enjoy discussing it, I enjoy teaching. It's just good for kind of your mental health to be able to think and, for
Yeah.
overall, your health, stress, it helps with a lot of those things. And you've been going to some tournaments in the past few years, or when did you start doing that?
So I went to UK tournaments run by the UK BGF. Started about 7, 8 years ago. And now I go to a number of them across the year whenever I can. So the UK Open is a big event. Nick Blazier was there this year. And the London Open is excellent as well. So we have a number of big events, Blackpool, Liverpool, Midlands Open, all sorts, that go on.
And that's nice because it's a relatively small, so travel is not that hard. You could drive to most any of them, right?
Yeah, driving or taking a train to most places. And the venues are often pretty nice. And it's a good UK community with a lot of strong players. The UK, has quite a lot of Grandmasters now.
There are.
And of course, people like Gaz Owen and Seb Wilkinson are known worldwide, but there's other lesser known players who are also extremely strong players. So that's fantastic, to see the emergence of younger players, also women, stronger women coming forward. which is excellent as well. So, Safi, Cecilia, there's, Anna, there's a lot of people kind of in the UK community that may not frequent many international tournaments, but they are, forces to be reckoned with. They play at a very high level, and you draw them in the tournament, you better be playing well. Otherwise, you're not going to be going much further. So,
Yeah, and I saw this year you attended the Backgammon World Championships in Monte Carlo, Monaco, and they welcomed you as a celebrity. I watched you doing some commentary with your sunglasses.
yeah, I mean, I was honored really because Mark Olsen asked me to commentate with him, and that was great, And actually, that was the first time I'd ever met Mark in person, right? We've
Yes,
communicated, but that was great. So we commentated on Moch's match, which was brilliant. Really enjoyed it, and of course, playing in Monte Carlo, around like the backgammon kind of superstars is crazy, right? Like everywhere you turn, there's someone famous, right? There's like, oh, there's Mochi, there's Victor Ashkenazi, there's right. It's pretty cool, right?
right.
These were people obviously I had on and talked to, but hadn't met in person up to that point. Yeah, it was great. I mean, obviously, very well run event, beautiful hotel, the Fairmont. Obviously, playing 17-point matches is not something I do kind of very often. So
Right.
there's a kind of stamina that's required, as well as obviously the understanding to play. And the matches are at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, is your first match. I mean, the second one is at 10 p.m. at night, right after dinner. And most evenings I was playing into the early morning. I was playing to about 2 a.m. in the morning, right? Because a lot of my matches were very close and went to DMP. So I made it to the last 16, and Victor Ashkenazi I played, who's obviously a giant and great guy, and it was 16-16, right, DMP. And I was in a driving seat, and I thought, gosh, I'm going to be Victor. This is like crazy, and then it was a holding game, and he rolled a double five, and he jumped to prime, and then he won basically. But it was so exciting. There were 20 people watching the game, and very, very, very exciting, and a fantastic experience really for for anyone. They have an intermediate tournament there. They have doubles tournaments. Yeah.
Yeah, that's outstanding. It's really exciting, and I think it's also fun to be able to do a commentary, but it's a little bit difficult to do a commentary. I mean, what that was your first time doing it. What did you think?
So I've done some commentating for the UK. I did some at the
Uh-huh.
UK Open. I commentated on the intermediate final. I mean, of course, when I commentate, if I'm commentating on intermediates, it's a lot easier than commentating on Mochi, because I kind of think, well, what am I going to say, here? I mean, it's crazy, right? But still, the audience that is watching that match could be ranging from people who play a 3 PR to people who play a 25 PR. So whatever you're saying about these are the things you should be thinking about in a position, it's going to hit some of the audience. And I think that's important to remember, that it's educational, right? When you're doing commentating, it's important to entertain to a certain extent, but also to inform and tell people like what should they be looking at in this position, what is important,
Yeah,
Um,
that's good. I think I do that when I do my commentary videos. I'm fortunate I have the XG feed, so I kind of know the answers in advance, but I'll also try to understand the reasons. And also, with the Grandmasters and with other guests that I have, it's important to understand you have a diverse audience, ranging from the most advanced to the newer players, and it's good to be able to give advice for different levels.
yeah, absolutely. You know, Franz Kafka, he has this great expression of like the axe smashing the frozen ice that's within. And I kind of think sometimes when you're listening to commentary or watching an interview, someone might say something that is like the axe, which is like a pivot point, right? It really changes your understanding, right? They'll say just a small thing that will make you like really reassess um, how you think about the game.
It's
And
like a
that,
light bulb that goes off.
yeah, exactly, right? Yeah, something that you just haven't thought about before, right? It's like the first time you learn about, leaving blots in front of stripped points or something, right? That it's like,
Right.
oh, and then you start to see it everywhere when you play, right? It's like, oh my gosh, and backgammon is ultimately a way of looking, right? That's what we're doing. We're trying to hone our looking. C.S. Lewis said it's not about the landscape, it's about the way of looking at the landscape, right? So there's not one mountain, there's different mountains depending on how you look at it. And I think that's a really
Yeah,
great way.
your philosophy, your backgammon philosophy is based a lot upon on literature, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the whole thing is a story, really. When you're playing a position forward, you can kind of narrate it, right? You can say, well, I'm going to do this, and then this is going to happen, and that's going to happen. And, like the kind of Zenic method, but I know people like Will Snellings, and Seb has also talked about that you kind of narrate the story of the board, right? Of the position going forward. And like Japanese players, have mentioned that the reason why they're really good at backgammon is because of the kanji script, and they're so used to looking at patterns. So for them, they have this kind of predisposition to pattern recognition, which isn't as strong. Now, I don't know whether that is just a kind of, you know, a curiosity, but it's something that might explain, why there is a dominance of extremely strong Japanese players, often at a very young age.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And however you think about it, it's good. It's good to learn. Doing these videos, it's just outstanding. People learn. I'm sure there have been thousands of people who have watched and learned from your videos. People comment they learn from my videos, which is great. I enjoy it. It's a tremendous way to grow the game. So, I mean, I have to congratulate you on all of your efforts on doing that. I think, making these videos is a great way to grow the game. I don't know if you've thought of other types of ideas as to how we can grow the game.
I think there's a lot to do, getting it into schools and colleges, having more media coverage of it. You mentioned earlier social media, but getting documentaries out there. I think they are making one of the World Championship. More footage of things happening, right? More added prize money, making more attractive, more youth tournaments. Um, you know, things, maybe more books. I mean, has anyone written a really good book on DMP yet? Right, for instance, right? That's something that could be written, right? Um, there's a lot of ways I think to grow the game. bring more women, to bring more children. I know there are things already happening, and people advertise it on Facebook and share the good work they're doing. But we all need to be doing stuff, right? There is a kind of responsibility on us all as players to be growing the game, to spreading the word, to be introducing new players. Like, backgammon is simple. I taught my neighbors how to play a few weeks ago. It took me about 4 minutes, right? I mean, it's that quick, isn't it? And then who knows? Maybe they'll play around with it, but it's a start, right? It's very simple to learn, hard to master. But yeah, it's fantastic to play, and there's a lot of life lessons, involved, risk and gain, consequence and action. But ultimately a way of looking. I think one of the best things you can teach new students, is how to look at a position. Like how are they looking and what are they looking at? And it kind of sounds a bit obvious, but it's really not. Like, when you see the checkers, what are you actually looking at? What are you seeing? Because a lot of mistakes are oversights because you're not reading the 4 quadrants of a board, right? Or you're not looking at how this checker, here we have 5 checkers and here we have 2 checkers, right? So you need to get a feel and gauge those kind of patterns, and that is just about looking. And I know obviously there's a lot of maths and probability involved, but you can get pretty damn good by just looking at the right things, right? I think really as a starting
Right, absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah, I tell people, backgammon is easy to learn but hard to master. The winner's the one who bears off faster.
Yeah.
And I agree. I would agree that there's a lot you have to think about in terms of risk versus reward, and that teaches you a lot of life lessons, because in life you have a lot of choices where you have to look at the risk and reward. And I read Bill Roberti's written many, many books. One of the most prolific authors. His most recent one is about the opening in the back game, in the backgammon game. And I think reading it, I remember 2 words that basically, if you think about that, it's a really important thing to learn, and it's the subtitle of volume 2, which is, it's like volume 2, everything matters. So that's what he discusses. Everything matters when you look at the entire board, starting with the opening positions. The opening position itself, I tell people that's the most important position to study, because that's the position that occurs in every single game. So you need to kind of have an idea about that position and how it develops. And he talks about looking at assets and liabilities in all 4 quadrants of the board. And I think that in the opening position, the biggest liability is the 2 back checkers. The other liabilities are the stacks on the 6 point and the midpoint. And then you have your assets and things like that. So thinking about that, looking at everything, thinking about what's your goal, what would you like to do. I feel like sometimes something really good for students is, I tell them, before you even roll, think about what would you like to roll and what are your goals in the next move or 2. And I think you learn a lot from that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and that is like the story, right? The narrative of thinking, if I got this, then what comes next? How does the story progress? And again, articulating a story is you're verbalizing your understanding. And there are kind of ways to approach literature like that. Is I didn't know how I felt about this novel until I articulated it aloud. It's kind of this strange kind of way of like, like therapy on yourself or something, you know. But yeah, I mean, and what I love about backgammon is this lineage, right, of great players. So you've got Roberti, superb, right? Roberti was taught by someone at some point who was superb. And then maybe that person was taught by someone who's superb. And, you know, like Brans Hoffman is superb teacher, right? He was taught by Stick Rice, obviously superb player. He himself must have been taught by somebody. So we're all kind of standing on the shoulders of giants. And I think every book has got something to offer, right? Every player has something to offer you. You know, you can be like very elitist about things and be like, I have nothing to learn from intermediate players, but actually maybe you do. You know, maybe they've just read something and have an insight into the game which could be part of your, you know, toolbox, right? Or something you haven't really considered. So I again, it's a community. We're all kind of connected on this big web of learning. And, you know, your videos, you know, your Grandmasters series, you know, there's insights coming up all the time, you know, just things people say, glimmers of knowledge, and you start connecting these up, then you have this kind of map of learning, right? And the more you have, and the more you've consolidated that, then the better you're going to see the board, right? The better the mountain will be when you're looking at it, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's very enjoyable for me and for you, of course, and for others. I've been talking for a little bit now. Some of the other things some people enjoy talking about is stories of backgammon adventures or tales or anything like that. Do you happen to have anything that's interesting you might want to share?
I mean, of course, you know, I've seen things and heard things, and I mean, yeah, you know, I'm not a big money player, to be honest, and I think often like a lot of these good stories are associated with those kind of high cash games. But you know, you see kind of things going on, like I know different cheating episodes, and you know, various fallings out. Nothing that specific, really. You know, yeah, just stuff that happens, I guess, you know.
Yeah, I've had some interesting stories. Not necessarily the like the negative stuff, but I remember I was watching a show with one of my friends, and he was in the box against multiple other players, and he had a whole bunch of the opponent had four cubes. Four players had cubes, and it was a last roll position. His opponent needed only double six to win. So and he's one of my friends. Before the opponent rolled, I said possible, and then he rolled double six, and he got so mad, and he tried to take it out on me. But you know, these are the kinds of funny stories that happen.
Yeah, I mean, there are some grey ones, you know, about McGrill, and you know, you're probably familiar, you know, with some of these, you know, the one where McGrill on the helicopter. You know, you can take the helicopter from Monte Carlo to Nice. And he was on the helicopter. I think Falafel was there, maybe Macomb Gaia. And he's like, you know, if his helicopter touches the water, then you owe me this much money. Do you want to take the bet? And they're like, sure, we'll take the bet. And then, of course, McGrill starts rocking the helicopter to try to get it to dip. So, you know, stuff like that is quite entertaining, really. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of other stories about like people betting on all sorts of things. I talked with Matt Congeyer. He had a bet that he would have to cross weights with falafel at one point, and their difference was like 100 or 200 pounds at one point, and they crossed weights and they won the bet.
Yeah, I know, I heard about it. And they both actually did it, I think, you know. Yeah, remarkable. All sorts of stuff. Yeah, and people throwing TVs out of windows or boards going across the room. Various. It's a passionate game, right? I mean, I thankfully haven't, done that, but some people do. Yeah. So
There was there was a story I heard. I don't know if you've heard. Someone bet someone on. I don't remember the exact details, but he uh, he paid someone, a man, to get breast implants, and it was like some sort of a bet. And then the man got breast implants and decided to keep it. And he's a
yeah,
relatively well-known backgammon player.
yeah.
So
No, I know that story. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
there's a lot of stuff like that, that's going on. And I mean, in my interview with Phil, he shared some great stories as well.
Oh yeah.
Phil raconteur, and so definitely watch that. I don't want to, steal his thunder, but there's some really fun things that go on, and I mean, and maybe we need to publicize that more, right? You talked about growing the game. Well, this is one way to grow it, through the humor and the strangeness of these stories. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, backgammon is just fascinating, really. I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful game, and I was looking at a position yesterday with Alec Barr, and it was about leaving like four blots, in front of a point. And it was just like something you'd probably never find over the board. But when you understood the rationale behind the play, it was just beautiful. It was all about forcing your opponent to break the point, diversifying the numbers, playing into your stronger board, the boardage. Yeah, and that's a great thing, isn't it? But when you understand the game more, it becomes more beautiful, right? It's
Right.
like you go to Italy, you go to the Sistine Chapel, right? You look at the ceiling, you think, oh, that's pretty. There's lots of nice, painting here. But actually, if you were an art scholar and you understood, Michelangelo, and you understood the meaning behind the fresco, then it would be more beautiful because you'd have that deeper understanding of what you're looking at. And I think that's true backgammon. For some people, they look at a position and they'd be like, whatever, God, what are you doing? But when your understanding increases, you see more things. It's like the magic eye. The picture starts emerging. Do you remember those? The magic eye, Alex?
I've seen those ones where you look at it and you stare long enough and you see a different image.
Yeah, yeah. That's a
Yeah.
bit like looking at a difficult position, right? It's like your
Yeah, yeah,
thinking kind
absolutely.
of coalesces. Yeah, yeah. I
Well,
think
good.
that's it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that that's a lot of information. Really enjoyed all of your videos. I believe I've watched all of your videos and some of them multiple times, and a lot of our viewers have enjoyed that as well. And it's been wonderful to have you on. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about, or anything you wanted to conclude before we conclude the video?
Um, Not really. Just to say, Backgammon is beautiful. Go and check out my channel on YouTube. Lots of stuff on there. Yeah, and if you want lessons, then just please contact me, and I'm happy, happy, happy to talk about that.
So I will put a link to your channel in the description. And what's the best way to contact you, should people be interested in lessons?
Yeah, either leave a comment on one of my videos or email me at dan@backgammonisbeautiful.com, and then I'll just get back to you. We can have a chat.
I will
Um,
put your email in the description as well.
Thank you. And also thank you, Alex, for the work you're doing. I know I empathize. It's hard work creating content, right? And you're putting out a lot of great content with a lot of great players, and I'm enjoying watching those videos too.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to do something that you actually enjoy. It makes it a lot easier, and especially when I have so many wonderful guests such as yourself, as well as others. It's just wonderful. I hope that you can join me for future videos. I know we discussed some other possibilities, and I think that is great. Any final remarks before we conclude this video?
I think that's it. Hope to see you, in LA or, at a tournament in the
Yeah,
future. That would be great to just play in person. So
yeah.
looking forward to that in the future.
Yeah, that would be great for me. With my family and work, it's a little hard for me to travel, but I look forward to those kinds of things in the future. So we'll go ahead and conclude. Thank you very much for your time. It's really been a pleasure speaking with you, learning from you, enjoying your videos on the channel. Thank you to the viewers for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe, and you'll be notified every time I upload a new video. Please let me know what you think in the comments below and what you'd like to see in future videos so I can work on that. Again, my book, Backgammon Backgame Strategies, is available. There's a link in the description to where you can get it. And I will put a link to Dan's YouTube channel as well as his email address if you're interested in lessons. And I'm also offering lessons. I'll put my email in the description as well. And I look forward to seeing you in future videos. And until then, keep rolling your dice.